Hello, I'm Mr. Southgate, your woodwind and brass tutor at Penrail Comprehensive School. Today is a little bit more advanced and it might have taken you a few lessons or a lot of practice to get to this stage. You'll have played lots and lots of low notes and you may have even had a go at some of the higher notes. Now you might have found those last two really tricky on both sides. So you've got the B and the C, the high B and C, and then the low F and then the low E. Those are often quite tricky because we're using all the fingers and sometimes using different combinations. Okay, so I might have taught you a couple of different ways to get each of those two notes. But the thing today is all about crossing the break. Now what we mean by the break is moving between one of these low sounds, which just use the thumb covering the hole, to a higher sound where we are covering the hole with our thumb and pressing the key at the same time. Okay? This key makes the sound of the instrument, or helps the sound of the instrument, to go up by a whole 12. That's 12 notes higher. So for example, what would be a C, where without the thumb on that button, becomes a G, a high G, which is 12 notes higher for music theory, especially if you're doing music theory. So how do we do that nice and smoothly? It can often take time on a clarinet. It's one of the hardest things about the instrument because often when we've got all the fingers down, especially, one of the fingers often moves off of the key. So the first thing to check if the sound isn't happening very well, is to check that you are using the squidgy parts of your fingers and covering all of the holes and pressing the right buttons. Okay, you can, quite often, it's easy to accidentally press one of the other keys by mistake. That's another common error. Remember, C shape with both hands, that helps us avoid the extra keys. But don't worry if you do get this wrong, it does take time for everyone. One of the ways is just to slowly go down, especially if you are squeaking, from a higher note that you can do well and slowly add fingers. That often identifies where you're going wrong. Because if you're doing this, like that, and you're not sure, oh, what's going wrong? If I go down, you can see that it's this finger here that didn't change the sound. So it's that finger that was out of place. So that's the first little bit of advice. But when we're moving between the break and low notes, an excellent exercise is just to practice a low fingering, then simply add the key. Notice that my thumb hasn't had to move up and down. It's in the right spot anyway. I'm just pushing its tip down to get that thumb down. So this is a low note, that's a high note. This is a low note, that's a high note. None of my other fingers have had to move. Quite often as a beginner, you do this and then you have to move the whole thing and then that's where things go wrong. So just be careful of that so your thumb can point upwards slightly. So this is a low G, high D, just by pressing there. And you can go up and down in the same way just to help practice that shift and movement. To support it even more, inside your mouth for a low note you could think oo or ah, and for a high note you could go up to E. Ah-ee, ah-ee, ah-ee. Just simply doing that change whilst you're blowing can actually help the instrument make the sound even clearer and better. So if this is your first time doing the break, it's a really tricky thing. It does take a lot of work, but have lots of fun, enjoy experimenting with your instruments and see, even if you've never tried the break before and you're watching this video, see what happens if you do press one of this button and you go ooh-ee with a fingering pattern of a note that you know really well, like the C, and see what happens to the sound. Okay, so good, have fun.